25 episodes. Not too shabby, huh? Well, what do you say we do 25 more? Okay. Let's just get through this one and we'll see how it goes. But you know that it's always time to go indie now. Hello, everybody. It is indeed time to go indie now. Our 25th time, in fact, that we are doing so. So thank you so much for tuning in each and every time that we do these episodes and this show. It is awesome to have you here. We have an incredibly jam-packed show for you, so I won't be doing too much talking. We have a new segment that we'll be doing every month now, featuring the awesome CL Cannon. She's going to give you a marketing tip that coincides with what she does on her own YouTube channel. So we're kind of doing a cross promotion there with her channel and ours, and we're happy to do so. Anything that helps us out as indies is always welcome on our show, and I really appreciate her taking the time to do so. So let's get right to it, because this is a jam-packed show and I want you to absorb it all. So thank you so much for joining us. I will be back a little bit later, and until then, let's on with the show. So, I mean, this year's CineQuest theme is impact and having a vision within that impact. How do you feel your film fits within that theme, and what do you like about the theme?
Our film, you know, I think Impact. We had a screening last night and got to see it in front of an audience for the first time because it was the world premiere, and just the impact of them and having a good time. Like, they were having so much fun, and everybody walked out in such high spirits. And like we used to work at a movie theater when we first moved to LA, and we used to have, it was the floor team when we had to wait. You know how you have to clean the theater, so we would wait and watch the way you just watch people come out of a theater, and it's funny to see whether they're like sad or they're like, I thought it was a waste of time, or like they're happy. And it was like, I think we had a good like, hey, I don't know how I was feeling before this, but now I feel great, and I'm like laughing my ass off. Yeah. But, yeah.
Yeah, and I think also we kind of have a unique comedy that is just very funny, but also puts on a lot of actors of color, fantastic actors of color, and I think that's a subtle impact to add into the conversation and representation.
I mean, the acting in this movie is so spot on, and it seems like the actors have a great sense of staying true to their characters. How much of that was on the page? How much room did you allow for improv?
Yeah.
Well, we definitely had a script that Lamar and I were shooting, but I think on set we have tons of improv actors that are in the cast, so it's like we can't have those actors on set without doing that.
And we were like we all came out of UCB up in LA, so when we were writing the script, we kind of knew who was gonna play some of these parts.
Sure.
So there was no sort of like, and I think we always had this philosophy of like, with writing, we're like not precious about anything, especially with comedy. And like there's a scene where Tony Baker, who plays Viola, is like, he's backing away from the DJ booth, and he's just walking back, and he's like talking shit to the DJ. And I think that entire run was improvised. And we did it like 4 or 5 times, and every time one of yelled cut, like the entire crew would bust out laughing.
Right. He was like, how far do you want me to back up? I'm like, I don't know, man. What do you think? Just go for it.
Now, the idea of chaptering, did that come into the original script concept, or was it after in post that you guys decided, hey, that would probably work with this film?
It's funny because it was in the original script. We did have an idea to chapter it up, and then we threw it away. But then as we got to post, we realized for pacing issues, just because over the course of the night, there's a lot of time passage. You know what I mean? And it's like we didn't want to like constantly show a clock or something like that. Like that wasn't like the point of it. Like it's more like it's showing the you know, the I guess existential problem with time. You know, way. So so those title cards like really kind of pace out the film and like chapter it up. So that was it was a decision at first, and then became we doubled down on it in post.
And was it important to kind of mix it up a little bit because there's shorter chapters and there's longer chapters? And were you guys very conscious of that when you decided to put these chapters in? Did you?
I would say, yeah, definitely. I think the point of it is they're a little chaotic, like and the fact that they're different times. But each one is segmented to be a part of the party, you know, in itself.
Right. Yeah, and I think it sort of helps with the idea of a party in general, like what a party is, and like the stages of a party, because it is interesting when you think of the course of the night when you go to a party and you're like, okay, I'm here, this is the beginning, and now I'm like kind of getting my feet wet. Or there's no food here. Like the first thing you realize at a party when there's no good food, you're like, all right, well, am I gonna stay here? Okay, yeah, and it's like and it sort of progresses in that way. So I think it was cool to because it is all in one night, the whole film, and it's cool to kind of just explore those different aspects of what a party is. Yeah.
Hey, where you at, nigga? I'm at your goddamn surprise party.
Everybody high! Hey, y'all, high!
I wanted to do something different for Corey this year.
Corey, get here. Y'all about to have a motherfucking hot spots ready.
I'm gonna surprise that nigga with nostalgia. This nigga Corey not coming. That's what I've been saying.
You even know where he is?
He was doing something, and then he said he's gonna be back.
Do you know when Corey's gonna get here? I'm getting really tired.
Yeah, honestly, I don't really know much about Corey.
Dang, yo, half.
None of you people are even friends with each other. Come on over, come on over, come on over. We're having a party for you.
There's several subtle societal statements in this film. They're made very subtly, like the cell phone issue. When we turn and we see everybody on their cell phones. And then there are some that are overt. And a lot of times with these kind of films, the overt ones kind of take over and kind of wash it away and bury it. Were you guys very careful about that, especially in the writing process about, hey, look, I don't want to make this another film that just gets lost and mired in the comedy, but still has a point to make?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that's what we was trying to do. Yeah.
We meant to do that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a writer for the TV show New Girl for 2 seasons, and that show, that's writing like sitcom, like every line is joke. Like, I mean, literally we go through every line. It's like has to be a joke. And like when I got back with Weldon, and when we started writing together, it was like very fun to sort of like step out of comedy for a second and just like let the story breathe into something that like is personal to us. Because I think, not that New Girl's not personal, I have my own connection with New Girl that I love, but with this was like we had we were experiencing this as friends and in LA, this idea of like success and people being affected by other people's success, and we like, at the time, we would go on I would go on Facebook and see some friends book something that I knew, and then I'd be like, man, what am I doing wrong? How can I get there? Or why? But why does that affect me? Or like you would see your friend go to Hawaii, and you'd be like, man, I'm not traveling enough, or like, how do I do better? And it's like, why is this actually making me feel affected? So we were like, I think we realized now, we didn't realize this till just now, it's like, we picked a good story that we could carry for 3 years, because like, we're going to have to live with this idea for so long. Right. So I think that was something that sort of made us feel like, well, if it's going to be funny, it's got to like mean something to us too.
Right. Yeah. And I think just in terms of your question, there is a difference just because it's a longer format of consciously pulling back jokes for certain moments so that we can like ramp up into other jokes. So it's like, we consciously like balance the film in that way.
Do you feel like self-deprecation and making fun of oneself is a lost art in film these days? because you guys do it so well in this movie, you know, and I had to imagine that actors were really excited to sign on with something like that, right?
Yeah, that's. I don't think it's lost that much, but I think it's not as prevalent in films with people of color. I think sometimes we're worried about making ourselves look so good because we've been shown so negatively in media. So we're like, all right, I can't have this character be like this because, you know, I want to make sure that we're representing black people as a whole. And I think what's beautiful about what's happening right now is like with shows like Atlanta and Insecure and Black Panther coming out, it's like people are able to just do the work and like we're not representing the entire black culture. This is just their show.
Yeah.
This is my show and this is their show and like this is our expression and we can have characters that are flawed and black characters are flawed and each one can be flawed in their own way, and it doesn't have to be like this one character is representing the entire nation of black people. And yeah, and so it makes it great to see. I've never really seen rappers portrayed vulnerable, like on screen, really, or like insecure, you know.
You guys started with a lot of short films, and as filmmakers, do you feel like that is an important vehicle, and what do you guys use short films for in terms of how your process works?
When we were doing shorts, it was more for us to sort of, I don't like the word practice because I think, you know, you just kind of just want to make something.
you're doing.
Yeah, but you know, it definitely felt like let's just keep making stuff, and in that looking back, it definitely was a process. The process itself was like us finding our voice, and I think when we go back and look at all the videos, we made like 40 videos. Hi, my name is Travis Thurman, but today I want to talk to you guys about stereotypes. The stereotype is that we have large penises ranging from 9 to 13 inches for the modern black man. My penis is 4.2 inches, that's erect. Think of a small roll of quarters with $1.25 taken out of it. And on top of 2 other short films. And I'm like, oh, you know, now when we made this film, I don't know how well we would have done it if we hadn't done that, because it was definitely like, you know, when making the movie was like the hardest thing I think we've ever done. Sure. And that was like, but we had this like confidence of like the fact that we just produce a lot. So we're like constantly producing. We like know the flow of what producing means. And it really helped us. So I think shorts help in finding your voice, to answer your question.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback on what Lamar is saying, right now you can make a short that's not geared towards the taste of a film festival. Now, you know, you can be very unique in your voice, and I don't think that was an option 20 years ago. I think you know, like you had to get that short into the film festival because that was your platform to show it. But now it's like, you know, our short that the last short that we made before this feature, it has more views on Instagram than it does anywhere else. You know, I mean, it's like more people have seen that short, and you know, they like it on Instagram. It's like, okay, we'll take that. You know, we want the views.
As artists, we're our worst critics, and you guys saw it on the big screen for the first time last night, but you've seen it probably a million times, the final cut, and you kind of look at it and you go, oh, I wish I had done that better, or I wish I had seen that, or that should have been tighter. But I want to know from you guys, not any of that. I want to know what you think you nailed.
Yeah, we nailed it all, baby. Perfect, flawless. There's a moment, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a sort of this comedic bit with this one character who's sort of posted up in the party the whole time. And to me, it's like, it just worked. Like, you know, like just on a purely comedy level, it just like, we didn't place him too much in the film. He was like subtly planted in the movie to where when he blows up, it turns into this very funny moment. And I was like, you know, just as a comedian, I think I'm proud of that, because it's like, it's so hard to like make jokes, like just I perform a lot on stage, and it's hard to like, you know, make people laugh. So like that was, to me, it was just like, yeah, that worked, and it works every time. Every time people see it, they laugh their ass off, and like it got like applause after that scene. And I was just like, damn, man, that was hot. Like, that was cool. If we could have mess that up if we overplayed it, you know. And I think it's that like tension, like I love that shit, man.
The thing I'm particularly proud of is the music on the film. Like we definitely, music on film is a challenge, you know.
important part of this movie.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, you know, half of the music's done by a composer that we know from LA. His name's Jukebox, and you know, he killed on that. And then the other half is
Jukebox was I was a vessel for Jukebox.
and the other half of the music is licensed music from up and coming artists. So we're like so happy that we, you know, like dug into this like indie world to get their get a soundtrack and like get their music in a movie. You know what I mean? Like it's we're super proud about that. Yeah, I think we nailed it on that.
Along those lines, what do you guys love about being indie?
Oh yeah. I like that you don't gotta answer to nobody. I mean, we had no bosses on set, you know, especially for me coming out of network TV. Like, you know, you gotta every decision has
really unique perspective in that regard.
right. Yeah, you have to really get approval a lot for everything, you know, because the more money you're getting, it's like harder to make decisions. But with this was like, we would be like, hey, you want to change that scene? Yeah, cool.
Sure.
yeah, let's do
right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, all right, let's cut that. Yeah, cool. And it was just like, yeah, it was such a cool feeling. And also on just a stress level of like coming into the set and like being able to run the set in a way that felt like comfortable for us and for the actors, and like made it feel like more of a family, more of a party. Weldon always says we want the set to feel like a party, and because we don't want any we want the vibe to feel like us, like just chill.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think also there's just so many moments in the performance where if we didn't set up like a playful vibe on set, then it would not feel playful in the film. So yeah, that's, I think, you know, because we're controlling the production, like we get to set that tone, and we don't have to have like a network or a production company set that tone for us.
Hello everyone, this is Jin OKUBO here at Go Indie Now. Today's review is for The Human Equation, presented by Dust. Dust has an online video presentation for sci-fi films. They're on YouTube.
If time travel became possible within our lifetime, and one of us was able to go back and leave a message for ourselves to find, what would that be?
The film is by Elton Gaffney, and it's a very interesting film, The Human Equation. I tend to think of the human condition when I think of it, but it's not that. Then I went back through it and I looked at her comments on her presentation for this movie, and the words were very straight and forward, and I think that's the beauty of it. It goes, new game, new rules, Female's alone in the desert. She can't talk. She's naked. She's tattooed. Something is watching her. That's the feeling she gets. And I think you should watch it. It's a nice 5-minute film, and I think you'll enjoy it. There is a very interesting idea of it being presented as a game, because there's people that are always out there going, life is a game, you gotta win it, you gotta push forward and win, win, win. And I think you're gonna enjoy this film. That film again is The Human Equation, presented by Dust on YouTube, and is filmed by Elton Gaffney. Right? You guys have a good one. This is Gino Kubo at Go Indie Now.
Mickle might has been mustered in this hall, my brothers. We Thursar have weathered the world even as it waxes dark. Not rime and wind, not wolf and bear, not even the deep hunger of winter will cause Thursey's people to grow weary or weak. A familiar, imposing timbre resounded in Drast's ear, which nearly caused him to jump out of his skin. He never could quite discern from where exactly it came. She's come to finish what I could not, Drast. He echoed the voice. She's come to do what her god could not, no doubt. He snarled, clenching his teeth to keep back a giggle that threatened to steal his breath. We have to fight, brother. We cannot let her take my other arm. That is why she has come. That is why she has come, to take it. She wants to see what the left hand tastes like, just like when Wolos took my right.
I'm curious to know, because I don't think I've ever heard you answer this question, but where did your love for writing begin? And was it at a young age? Did you start writing? How did you get into writing?
I started writing really young. I actually finished my first short story when I was about 9 years old. It was a horror story that I wrote. Really enjoyed doing that. And I think for my early years, writing was an escape for me. It was my way of essentially going on my own little adventures, because we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't travel to far away lands. We did do yearly vacations, but I didn't really get to live this epic lifestyle growing up. And so it was my way of escaping, getting to explore that a little bit. And then my sister, my older sister, who's 13 months older than me, was really big into writing when we were growing up. I remember when she was, 12, 13 years old, she'd spend every day just hammering away at the story that she was writing, which was probably more of a soap opera than anything else. But I was just fascinated by the process and watching her do that. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do that too. And lo and behold, I just kind of took off with it. I probably superseded some of what she was doing. I had my first novel finished by the time I was 17 years old. I had an agent, and I was just very prolific in wanting to do that as a career.
When you picked it up, you were really heavily influenced into the fantasy genre. So what about the fantasy genre called to you? What was it that made it more prominent than any other genre for you to write in?
I read a wide variety of different books growing up, but I think fantasy is probably the one that really secured my imagination and fascinated me, just again with the worlds and the escape and these beautiful places that people built up. Whether I was reading R.A. Salvatore or Robert Jordan or J.R.R. Tolkien, I just love the imagination and the world building they did. And again, growing up, a lot of the play that I engaged in was imaginary play. I was out in the yard with sticks, rescuing princesses and fighting off, bad guys. And so it was almost like taking my play and bringing it over into literature. And I would clarify, I never really put down writing. This was a struggle I think I had a lot in my young adulthood, in my early 20s. is because I was going to college. I was getting a degree. I was reading literary journals and research studies and writing papers and all these very in-depth topics in psychology and sociology. And even as much as I delved into that for schoolwork, I always found myself going back to the computer and scribbling down words and escaping again into my fantasy world. I could never stop writing. I kept coming back and doing it no matter how hard I tried to say, you know what, I got to take life seriously, because my mom always said, get your head out of the clouds, Josh. go and get a job that's going to pay you money. And so I would always end up coming back to writing, just time and time again. That's what I would end up doing. So even during, my 12, 15 years of working in a professional field and having a graduate degree, I was still writing during that time.
Do you feel like you published at the right time, though, that it came to you in the right moment, that it was time for you to move into that idea? Or did you feel like those 12 or 15 years where you were just kind of writing to write, did that seem like wasted time, basically?
I don't think it was. That's such a great question, because I've talked about this, I think, with younger writers many times, about how you really have to put in the work before your writing is at a level to share with other people on a professional level. And I think that a lot of writers in the modern day, where it's so easy just to upload your book and push it out there to the masses to read, aren't necessarily ready for that step. And it's not that they'll never be ready for that step, but you have to put your work through these trials of continuing to, write. Sounds crazy, but write 1 million words before you start sharing it with people, so you can really understand the craft that goes behind writing. If I would have shared those early scribbles that I had on paper, even my first novel I had done when I was 17, it would have been embarrassing. It probably would have crushed my need to write and put stories together. But by putting forth that work and finally being able to humble myself and listen to the advice of writers better than I was to change my craft so that it flowed better, I'm much happier with waiting 10, 15 years before putting anything out.
And you've worked a lot. You've worked with your brother. You've worked with your wife. You've produced content with both of them. Take us through how that process works. How do you guys work together? Was it different each time? Or I would assume that you and your brother have a different method than you and your wife.
Yes, we definitely do. My brother, honestly, is probably, what's what I'm looking for? I don't want to say more firm-handed, but he definitely likes to take control of the writing process a little bit more than Lillian. Lillian and I are pretty good just kind of sitting down, and we just kind of put together the story. And she always says this, and I'm quoting her, so I'm not trying to be arrogant in this, but she says, herself writes for the masses, for the mainstream. Just kind of sit down, grab a book, and be entertained, and then step away from that. And she says, Josh, you write for the intelligent crowd. You put in little breadcrumbs of information that makes them close that last page, and they have to sit down and think about it and be like, okay, now how does this apply to my life, and how do I incorporate this into my everyday? And so when her and I sit down and write, it's a for the masses type of thing. I don't try to pull her over into my writing style. I kind of let her take it and run with it, and we just kind of string together the story for entertainment. With JC and I, it really comes down to building the craft and building the book around a concept. We sit down and be like, okay, what do we want to teach during this book? What are the themes of this book? All right, so who are our characters, and how do we make them apply to those themes? How do we take the opposite characteristics of what we're trying to teach, and what pinpoints do we put in the story or along the plot line to force that character to become whatever it is that we're trying to talk about or what we're trying to teach about in the story? And so it becomes this much more analytical process in putting a story together with him.
Josh is a heavy plotter. He's probably one of the most prolific plotters that I know, and he's very good at it. And anybody who wants to take a look at what he does, he does a lot of talking about it on his website and blog and such. I'm curious though, how long does it take you to develop your process? And does it still evolve, or do you have a set routine down now?
In terms of the process of putting a book together?
Yeah.
I feel like I have a pretty set way of doing it now, which helps me write quicker than I did before. And nowadays I find more of a struggle with balancing writing time with marketing and going to cons and doing stuff on social media to kind of push myself out there to be known. But in terms of actually writing the book, I feel like I have a pretty set process, which is really comes down to spending about 2 weeks where I build the characters, I build the plot, I outline the story, I get it fully functional, and then I spend about 2.5 weeks writing the entire book.
What have you learned from that process or experience that you're taking into the next one?
Oh my gosh, I love that question, Joe. One of the things that I've learned, and this is something that JC, my brother, and I talk about very often as he's getting started on his first trilogy, is that when you're putting together a series, you always have to go back and like read details of what you put in prior in order to make sure everything flows and fits. Because again, if you don't do that, you're gonna have issues like the Star Wars movies where it's like, okay, how comes Obi-Wan says he's never heard of an R2-D2 when he was with one for 3 episodes? So you end up having to like really go back and research and find information. But this is what I've learned. There's always an answer. There's always a connection. No matter how far separate it seems when you're kind of structuring that plot into the next book and putting it together, you can always find a way to link the two, especially in a fantasy world. Now, it may take you a little while to come to that light bulb that kind of goes off and lets you know, yeah, this is it. But there's always one. I've always found that I can link, you know, this over here in book 1 with this in book 3 with just a little bit of ingenuity.
You're going through, or you've done the audiobook process. What's one tip you can offer authors before they go through the same process?
You're not going to find a voice actor that's going to please everybody. I've learned that pretty strongly, and that I really appreciate the response I get from fans and their feedback about what works and what doesn't work. But at the same time, I've also realized that everybody's got an opinion on the issue, as they do with most things. And so find somebody that you like, somebody that works well with you on a professional sense, and move forward with that. Don't just essentially have this knee-jerk reaction based on what everyone is saying around you or what a handful of people are saying around you.
And essentially, this is your baby. So, I mean, you had it in your head for so long and you put it out there. How hard was it for you to let that collaboration happen, to tailor your own voice with when you were listening back to what the audiobook producer was giving you?
You know, it was challenging, honestly, because you go through a lot of steps putting together an audiobook. You have to not only make sure the story reads fluently and that there's no real errors in the story, so that he's not going to stumble over words in case there are any that were missed, but you also have to do this lengthy pronunciation guide. And the Calendar series has a lot of complicated words. A lot of them are based off Slavic language, consonant pairings within there. We have like M's next to J's and things like that. And so in my mind, when I'm reading through my story, I of course am based around an English language. So even though I like including some of the Slavic language for flavor, I don't necessarily pronounce it in the way that the voice actor pronounces it. And so you put together this entire pronunciation guide, send it off to them, and then they come back and they still read it in a way that it doesn't sound like it in your head. Yeah. And there's some instances of it that's like, it makes you cringe. But there's other times that you see that and you go, I like his way better. Like that really adds some better flavor to what I was trying to accomplish than what I could have come up with myself. So it's a give and take. I think that's what's really important, which is what I like about my voice actor, is that he reads at a pace and at a level that anyone of any nationality can follow if they speak English, which is something that was really important to me, because my book does get picked up in Japan and Brazil and the Middle East and Germany and England. And we ourselves have certain, highs and lows and, in the way that we speak and the way that we express emotion, but he is able to read the story so that no matter where you are, you can pick up the story and enjoy it and not necessarily have to read into those. And so that was one of the things that was really important for me, that I think has probably rocked the boat with some listeners. They're like, oh, I want him to have more emotion here. Well, the emotion that you're looking for may not necessarily translate well to people that are buying that overseas.
Did you gain a respect for this medium doing this process?
I did, and I've really enjoyed going through the process, to be honest with you, and putting together them and listening to it come alive on audio. it was almost more exciting for me in the end than having the book in my hand. Because it does add something to it. In fact, with Melkorka, I tell people I love listening to the audiobook more than I like reading the book in my hand. It's just so much more, I don't know, thrilling. It fills me with a certain fire that I didn't know necessarily existed. And now that I have the second and third book being finished up in 2018 on audio, it's even more exciting because I'm going to have the whole series ready to go. But I am liking the platform. I'm enjoying.
So what have you cherished most about being indie?
I think it's the community. I don't know that I see the same type of camaraderie around professional authors that I see around indie authors. I like the willingness to share information and sharing tips and tricks, and you know, people are willing to even go out of their way to spend a little extra money to help indies kind of rise up, especially if they have the know-how and the ability to rise up. But it's that community sense that's built up around them.
What's your best advice for someone transitioning into a life of a full-time writer?
Before you do it, you really need to make sure that you have a routine down and that you hold yourself to that routine. And I've talked about this, I think, in a recent interview with I Create Daily, is that it's really that routine that separates professional authors from amateur writers. It's being able to stick to the pattern and do it every day and know essentially what your vices are and withholding those vices so that you can be successful and keep moving forward. I think that's really what it comes down to. You can't slack. You can't just step away and be like, no, I don't want to write today, or no, I don't want to do this month, because it's your livelihood.
And so you can only. Are you interested in pursuing the acting thing again? Are you happy with where you're at right now, and maybe that's something down the line?
You know, if I was ever given the option to do acting, I would jump all over it. That was probably my dream before I was a writer, was to be an actor. I always wanted to jump into that lifestyle. I did a couple of independent films. I did independent acting for years when I was in high school. I was the lead in high school plays where I memorized 120, 200 lines. I love the acting environment. I enjoy it. If I was given an opportunity to go down that path and even step away from writing for a short period of time, I'd probably jump all over it just for the experience, which is, again, one of my life type of goals. I'm all about the experience and trying something new and doing something.
Hello everyone, this is Gino OKUBO, and I would like to introduce my newest release, which is Cold Love. The plan seemed so easy in the beginning. Take Mark from Masumi, from the Guardians, corrupt him and control him. Suzuka is feeling the pull from being so close to Mark. There is something deep inside, screaming at her. You were supposed to be the one to corrupt him, not the other way around. It's the last of my series for my fantasy series. The fantasy series started off with Memories, and then it took off with Brotherhood, and now everything is being wrapped up in a pretty little unconventional chain bow in Cold Love here. Lost memories are no longer Mark's concern. The shadow in his mind provides him with the keys to all the knowledge held by the Orders, even the power to break the seals to his past. The Brotherhood and the Guardians no longer have secrets from Mark. That is, as long as he keeps listening to the voice. Masumi is the master to the magical fire that Amber Light provides. She is no longer the timid soul the Guardians protected. She is ready to cast off from Japan in pursuit of the woman who took her love, Mark. She will burn down anything that stands in her way to get him. So that's the description of the book. Let me know what you think. Reviews are always welcome. Alright? You guys have a good one.
Hello, my name is Kelly Rosaponi, and I'm excited to present my book, Gift of Dreams. Because she has always been considered different, Winter Malone does not believe that any man can love and accept her, even though she dreams nightly of the same hot guy. Gifted with psychic abilities to find the missing, she must put her talents to work once again when a little girl is kidnapped in her town of Black Falls. After the sheriff calls her to help, her past becomes intertwined with the victim's no-nonsense uncle who wants answers sooner than later. Rafe Wolf has no time for the supernatural world, even though he has the ability to walk into other people's dreams. He is not looking for love, even after he meets Winter, the woman who has starred in his dreams for nearly a year. 6 months after Winter finds his niece, Rafe relocates to Black Falls to begin a new chapter. As he and Winter are drawn into the mysteries of the kidnapping still occurring in their town, they must strive to stop the abductors, overcome their trust issues, and accept their gifts and connection to each other before all else is lost. In this romantic mystery, a psychic and a gifted man work to stop the evil penetrating their town while attempting to determine if dreams really do come true. This novel is, of course, a romance with a touch of mystery, suspense, and the paranormal. It's going to be the first novel in a series that I'm going to publish under the Black Falls. I really hope you enjoy reading the book and get as much excitement from the characters as I did creating them. Thank you.
I mean, could it be some kind of rash then? No.
Hi.
I mean, I doubt it. I can tell you've been scratching at them.
Claudette, this is our new tenant.
Oh yeah, McFarland, 212?
Actually, it's Conrad now.
We both know you're gonna come crawling back sooner or later.
There was a pretty bad situation with my next door neighbor recently. There's a pretty good chance that she had bed bugs. These are definitely not from any bed bugs.
I did a 16-point inspection, didn't find so much as a dead spider.
I mean, they're just too big. I'm not on drugs.
It ain't none of my business.
What are you doing in here?
I need you to help me. I mean, I keep waking up and I have new ones.
Are you okay, Miss Conrad?
I haven't been sleeping very well. Do you know if your neighbor had any animal vermin? Why? These wolves look very ragged. I mean, the impressions around the very edges kind of seem like they were caused by... What? Hello? Teeth.
We have to get you some help right now, okay? I'm gonna go get an ambulance right now, Jennifer! I have to do something proactive!
Come on.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen and butterflies. A.L. Mabry here, also known as Amanda. I am one of the co-owners of Our Right Side, and I am the marketing director for Our Right Side, and I am also an author myself. This month, my book Darker Days releases, and there will be a release party on Facebook starting on the 23rd, and there will be a book blog tour online, and you'll be able to find the details about that on my website, which is authoralmabry.com. Easy peasy. And today I am going to read for you the first story in the collection, which is Sweet Release. And I do want to note that Darker Days, The Storms Within is a collection of dark fiction short stories. They all have darker themes and really touch on the more sinister part of the human condition. I always loved New Year's. The promise of new beginnings, the taste of potential and hope. I would scrub the house from top to bottom, telling myself, out with the old, in with the new, as if just saying the words could make them true. I tried, year after year after year. Not every end means a brighter new beginning. This isn't the beginning of my story, but that's not what you're really here for, is it? Sometimes the ending is all you want. A shrill alarm slices through my cocoon. My serenity shatters, and I open my eyes. Familiar pre-dawn darkness greets me with its promise of just a little more peace. The bedroom curtain was crumpled on the floor beneath the window, and beyond the frosted glass, red and green lights twinkle, almost in mocking. With the rest of the house eerily quiet, Mark's breathing sounds amplified. I lie still for just a moment as the first panic attack builds. It swells in my chest, this violent ocean wave containing what ifs and not enoughs. I ride it out. What will the trigger be today? What will set him off? I resolve to be preemptive through my routine. As I roll out of bed, careful not to wake him, I force myself to remain calm. My swollen ankle twinges. When I go to bed, you go to bed. My wrist aches. Chicken nuggets? Do I look like a fucking 4-year-old? My back throbs. You should have known I wanted my blue shirt today. My scalp burns. Say you like it. I creep through the hall and check on the kids before I head downstairs to start the coffee maker. While I pull out the ingredients for this morning's breakfast, I relish the comfort of the most mundane actions. I beat a few eggs and put them in a pan to scramble for Randall and Jenny. Then I prepare Alice's gluten-free pancakes. I pour the batter into the heated griddle, then turn to stir the eggs before pouring myself a cup of coffee. The warmth of the coffee and the stillness of the morning wash over me. I stop for just a moment to savor it. I try to shake off the last of sleep's drowsy grip. With my calendar and to-do list spread across the counter, I tackle the day. Mark's lunch is next, so I quickly put it together and place it in the fridge. I pull out chicken breast to thaw for dinner. Then I remember we had chicken yesterday. I swap it for the cube steaks because Mark refuses to eat the same meat 2 days in a row. Breakfast and dinner, check and check. Every action is repetitive, the soul-crushing routine that ensures I see another day. I place 3 plates on the island bar and pile on breakfast that will go mostly uneaten. Anger nips at the back of my conscience, tired of the servitude, of the compliance. Oh, stop it, Holly. This nurturing servitude gives you joy. Without humor, I sigh. Liar. From the den, the Christmas tree beckons with its shiny baubles and handmade ornaments. I wander in with remnants of my coffee and gingerly brush aside the tinsel to look at this year's family photo ornament. The photographer touched it up perfectly, not a bruise in sight. I make a note to tear down the tree before dinner. Mark was strict about bringing an old tree into a new year. Out with the old, in with the new, Holly. If you would like a slot on the tour, we still have a few open, so just go ahead and message me on Facebook or send me an email at almabry@ourrightside.com, and I will get you on that list. Thank you, and thank you, Joe, for having me here. I appreciate it, and we appreciate everything you do for the indie community. Until next time, scribe happy and stay sassy. Bye.
Hello everyone, my name is R.M. Mulder and I am the author of the Conquest Saga. Today I'm going to talk to you about gamelit. It's a new genre and that has stemmed from a semi-newer genre called lit RPG. Several best-selling stories, including Brian D. Anderson's new release The Veil, are gamelit as a whole, but may not necessarily be classified as lit RPG. Brian's writing is so highly acclaimed that prior to The Veil's official release, audiobook giant Audible gave him a six-figure offer for exclusive rights to the story. The concern, however, of reader confusion between gamelit and lit RPG is real. I quote Brian in a recent Facebook comment. "It's funny, a ton of my also bots are lit RPGs. I hope they don't think The Veil is lit RPG or I'm in store for some pissed off reviews." So what's the difference? On September 4th, 2017, a discussion was held among a handful of authors, including myself, Zachariah Dracolis, Dustin Tigner, and John Ward. A concern was addressed that there was a large number of stories that were receiving poor reviews strictly based upon an orthodox definition of what a select few people believed defined a story as lit RPG. The primary issue that was discussed on that monumental date was the fact that most of these poor reviews were unsolicited, and authors who were not among the lit RPG community were also getting caught in the fray. The simple fact was this: many of these authors never intended to write lit RPG in the first place, so getting a poor review based strictly on the concept of not lit RPG as the basis of the review was quite unfair. Thus, an agreement was reached that a new term was needed for stories that contained gaming elements but did not conform to the strict standards that had been adopted for lit RPG. After several possible monikers were offered, one stood out among the others: gamelit. Gamelit is a story with gaming elements essential to the plot, often includes features of science fiction, fantasy, or science fantasy. While all lit RPG books fit within gamelit, not all gamelit books fit within lit RPG. This is an open genre. There are no official groups, gatekeepers, or rule makers. On September 30th, 2017, we went public and announced the definition of gamelit on our group website, which can be found at www.gamelit.org. Since that date, many events have occurred which has caused the term gamelit to become confused as a synonym to lit RPG. Among these events included the trademarking of the term lit RPG. To mitigate the risk of trademark infringement, many authors quickly adopted RPG gamelit as a replacement term. So the future of gamelit. So now that you understand the history of gamelit's establishment, let's talk more about the future of this budding new genre. These stories contain gaming elements but are not necessarily restricted to being housed inside a game. For example, the story can be more about a gamer's real life and the challenges he or she faces from day to day. Alternatively, the story can be based in a fantasy world where playing a virtual reality game is critical to survival. So now I'm excited to tell you about the Gamelit Expansion Pack. Part of the strategic planning for the growth of Gamelit included a compilation of a Gamelit anthology. We are excited to announce that the first of a quarterly anthology, Gamelit Expansion Pack, will be released on June 1st, 2018, and is currently available for pre-order at the low price of only 99 cents. So, go strap on your VR visors and dive into this epic Gamelit collection that will immerse you in several exclusive in-game expansion stories by a handful of talented authors, including USA Today bestselling authors Anthea Sharp and Brian D. Anderson. You'll also find the sequel to Conquest, which is called it's Dark Force Conquest Expansion 1. Go grab your copy today at mybook.to/gamelit.
guys, C.L. Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press. Every month on the flagship show of Go Indie Now, I'll be giving you a marketing tip. Here's the first marketing tip I have for you. I'm going to talk to you about the 2 G's of marketing. Now, I'm not talking about spending 2 G's or making 2 G's. I'm talking about being generous and being genuine. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, being genuine means don't try to always be selling someone something. I like to think of it as if I'm going to a car lot and I'm going to buy a new car. There's 2 types of salesmen that will approach you. There is the overzealous, salesy salesman who is like, "Hello, how are you? Let me tell you about all the deals we have today. I can get you into this car for $999.95 with 0 APR, blah, 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 blah." And he sounds like a commercial. Those are the people that, I mean, they might snag a few people, but you can tell that they're not being genuine. They don't care about anything except for their bottom line. They want to make that money. Now, then you have the salesman that comes up to you and he asks you your name, and he wants to know what kind of car you're looking for, and he wants to know, what kind of family do you have, how much room will you need, where would you be taking this car, and they actually care. They make you feel like they care about you, and they care about you getting the right kind of car. Just always try to be genuine in everything you do, really, and you'll get so much of a better response to that, in my opinion. Now, what about being generous? Does that mean that you need to go out and spend a bunch of money on other authors' books? No, not really. But, even without spending a lot of money monetarily, you can help other authors by sharing their content, asking if they need anything. Perhaps they need a beta reader and you have some time. Perhaps they need some feedback on a cover. Be generous with your time, and people will remember that. People remember when you do things for them, and when you're not doing it just for personal gain. Just try to be generous with your time, with any skills that you have, and you'll find that goes a long way in this community. So, those are my 2 marketing tips. I hope they help you, and I guess I'll see you next month on Go Indie Now's flagship show. Thanks.
Your passion started very young, but when did the green light actually come on to this full time?
So, you are right. So I was songwriting by the time I was about 7 years old. So it definitely has always been I always knew it was my calling, but it was always, it's a really scary thing to jump into. Obviously being a musician and being a writer, it's not the most stable, what people would have you think, career choice. Honestly, what ended up happening is I had written some songs. Becoming a military wife was really where it started to develop, because when you're living that lifestyle, you're seeing all these other people, and it's just really extreme, whether it's joy or sadness or grieving or just difficulty. I just feel like the military lifestyle for everyone involved is just an extreme version of civilian lifestyle. So along with that, I'm sure you'd know, as an artist yourself, when you're in those situations, the overflow of that emotion tends to come out in your writing. So really that's where the songwriting just started just flowing. I mean, I was writing songs like crazy, and Soldier's Heart was really written, it was actually written, goodness, back in 2014, I think, and we were in Fort Bragg. And I decided I had finally gotten in touch with some local musicians because moving around so much, it's hard. It's so hard to get a community around you. And so I was lucky enough to meet these incredible musicians who had a really encouraging place, and they did this open mic night. And I went, and I'm sure in Fayetteville there's a bunch of Vietnam veterans. That's why they call it Vietnam. It's very well known for that. So I was doing this open mic, and I played Soldier's Heart, and one of the gentlemen who were there, he recorded it, and he took it back to his support group. And he had a support group, and he is he's very into utilizing art and poetry and stuff like that as a healing element for soldiers and PTSD. And so he took it back to this group, and there was this soldier, I guess, or this Vietnam vet, who was so cold and so guarded. And every time I tell this story, I get emotional, but he had just been so guarded for so long, and he heard the song and he started crying. And so, getting emotional. And so really that's where it hit. That was the green light, is as soon as I found out that it was so much beyond myself, and that there was, there were people out there that were helped by this music. I mean, you can't not pursue that. And so that's really why I do it, is in the hope that, it helps people.
That's the beat of a soldier's heart. That's the beat of a soldier's heart.
As someone who draws on experiences and inspirations to write, how does the song construction begin for you? Is it a lyric? Is it a riff? Is it a combination?
Yeah, most of the time it's a lyric, and it's usually my hook that comes first, which, I guess I'm lucky for that one, because it can be hard to find a hook. But yeah, it really is. It's the hook. I still remember for one of my other songs, Don't Give Up, I was doing some nonprofit work with a cancer research organization, and that's kind of their motto. And I still remember driving into the event that morning, and I just had it in my head, and it was like, don't give up, don't ever give up. And then it was just stuck in my head all day. And so that's really how most of them start. And then, I obviously just build the story around that entire idea.
What advice would you give someone who wants to learn how to play the guitar? You taught yourself to play the guitar, correct? How was that experience for you?
So I taught myself how to play the guitar far before YouTube or any of these online resources. So I hear that YouTube is really, you have some amazing resources there. So, use them. But honestly, what I did, and I think there's something special to be said about this, because I taught myself when I was a teenager. I was fairly young. I think I was about 15, and I had a passion for it. And I think a lot of times what ends up happening is people go into learning an instrument, and it's so rigid to where, you're learning the music theory, and you're just really just diving into all of that. And I think that a lot of times they forget that emotion and passion that led them to that instrument in the first place. So that's my real advice, is to keep tapping into that. So what I did is I listened to a lot of country. 90s country was kind of my jam. And so I would listen to a lot of country. I started listening to, that's when I kind of discovered worship music back in the day. And really what I did is I went to Walmart, because I was in a tiny town. That was like the store we had. I went to a Walmart, and I got one of those chord posters that they used to have. I don't even know if they make them anymore, but they had this poster, and it had all the chords on it. And I would just start slowly playing to the songs that, I'd print out we did have basic internet back then, so I'd be able to print out the chord charts. And that's how I learned how to play. I just kind of worked on each of the chords, and bless my parents' hearts, my guitar was not in tune for the first 6 months of playing. And so I was learning how to play on an untuned guitar. So big surprise, my Christmas present that year was a brand new guitar, and I also learned how to tune it. So that was good.
As a military wife, there's a lot of camaraderie, as much as there is amongst the enlisted and commissioned men and women who serve. But how has being a member of that community helped your career?
Oh man, stories and connection. It really is. I think that especially I think that social media has its pros and cons, but I think one of the cons to social media is that, people just aren't connecting face to face anymore. And I think that one of the biggest things that we tend to forget is, I don't know, there's like this separation that happens, I guess. And one of the biggest things with being a military wife and having that camaraderie, I was essentially like the really cool aunt to a lot of my military wife friends because they were all moms and I didn't have kids yet. We still don't have kids, and so I was available. And so when my husband was gone, I would go and I would help out the other wives. And I think the biggest thing with that is that your friends and the women around you, especially those that have husbands deployed at the same time, they really become your family. And I think there's something special to that. I think that there's also an element to that. The biggest thing that I learned is kind of look beyond what you're used to. We always have a tendency to put labels on people. And, once you label them, it's like, oh, I wouldn't get along with them because, this, and this. They're just not in my, they're not in my wheelhouse, whatever. Right. So, but that's one of the biggest things that I honestly learned is that I don't want to say forced, but you have these intense opportunities to really get to know people who are drastically different than you. And it's so amazing. One of my best friends is this. She's an older gal and she is from New Jersey and she is city and she is blingy and she's this gorgeous African-American woman, and her and I just come from completely opposite worlds. And that's one of the beautiful things that, I had the ability to experience because I'm from a very rural community on the West Coast. And so having that opportunity to really look beyond what you think certain labels are and actually really get to know the people around you, which is something I think a lot of people could learn from.
What was the recording studio experience like for you?
So what's really funny, it was actually in my house. So so it was an amazing opportunity. It's really funny how the whole thing came together. So obviously, you'll see from a lot of my stuff, I'm a Christian. And one of the things I always tell people is with the whole recording process, it really was God timing. I didn't want to do it. Like if you would have asked me this time last year, if I was going to have a single, anything like that, I would have told you were nuts. And so there was the producing company that came, they were traveling. And so they would travel. And the whole idea was to do these live recordings. And so, I prayed about it and I decided everything, came together. We decided to do it in my house because we were in the middle of moving. And so all of my stuff was out. And so I just had these gigantic rooms. And so we picked the room, with the best acoustics and we just set up. And so I ended up getting a couple of the guys that I would lead worship with. They were both soldiers, and I loved the opportunity to give that to them. These guys are serving their country. More than likely, they're not going to be able to go and record music. And so I decided, I was like, hey guys, let's just all get together and jam on this and, just see what comes out of it. And so that's what we did. And it was great. And we did it all in one day. If I had to choose again, I would definitely take a few days to do it. My voice is pretty much gone by the last song. But it really was, it's really interesting coming in as a songwriter into recording experiences, because what you bring into it isn't necessarily what comes out. I think one of the biggest things going into it that I really loved is getting the group together and just, we had made a couple tweaks to a few of the songs. And one of those tweaks was just having a guitar on Soldier's Heart. And it turned out amazing. And so what happens creatively when you get artists together, I think is so special and so awesome. And that was by far my favorite part of the recording process.
What do you cherish most about being an indie artist?
Having my own sound, and I hope that doesn't sound too cynical. It's really not. It's just having, I know you probably understand that. I don't want to diss, pop radio. Hey, those people do what they do, and it's great. People love it. It's just, it's just not a good fit, I guess, for me. So that's the thing, is maintaining my own sound, my own music, something unique. And really, I think part of also being an indie artist is just enjoying, I feel like I get to enjoy the process a lot more. I get really in depth with all the different things that you have to do in order to, you know, do this business. And I enjoy that. I enjoy looking at all of it, as opposed to, you know, I'd imagine if a record label signed or something like that, you know, I'm sure I wouldn't be doing as much. But yeah, I love having my own sound and being able to just, I don't know, to just kind of be, to kind of sit in that and just collect stories. And I don't know, to me, it just feels more, more naturally artistic, if that makes sense, as opposed to like big marketing.
What's one principle you think from the military that the music business should adopt that they would benefit from?
Oh, yes, I would honestly say respect. You know, it's, and again, it's like, I hope this doesn't sound cynical at all, but it's really, it's more of me honoring, you know, what I've seen and heard in the military. And again, I feel like you kind of step out of it, and you know, there's pros and cons to everything. There's definitely cons to the military too, and you know, it's, you know, the moving often, and there's the whole thing with the Army, and everyone says, you know, being disorganized. You could talk crap about it all day long, but the one thing I will say is the people that I've met that really exemplify what I feel the military honors is these people are heroes in their own right. Their stories will never be told. You know, it's stuff that it's stuff that can't necessarily be publicized, and they do it. They do it because they just want to serve, and they're so selfless. And the amount of honor and respect that they have is just, it's so moving. Like I say, it's like I get emotional even talking about that, just because it's so overwhelming to see that. And I think that that's something that the music industry, you know, I think that they could look at that and see a great example in, you know, selflessness. And it's like, why are you really doing this? Is it to, you know, and I think just honoring the heart behind those things, you know, as opposed to just looking at capitalism and that paycheck and like how, you know, I just, all of that. It's like, why are we doing this? And really understanding that music has power. I think that so often we get stuck in this thing where it's just all capitalism and pumping out song after song after song just to match like what you're selling. And just this reminder that, you know, what you put out there makes a difference. Whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, what you put out there makes a difference for good or bad. And I think just having that responsibility and remembering, you know, if you're in a position where you can change, you know, there's been songs that have changed the way we think about things.
Hello everyone, JB Taylor here with another indie audiobook review. This one is The Crown of Stones Magic Price by C.L. Snyder.
Lacking a scrap of detail or clothing of any kind, the beings lacked faces as well. They had no skin or hair or any discernible texture. Their bodies were solid darkness, indistinct, willowy, and ghost-like. I watched them close in, 8, 12, 16, 20. I know what this is, I said, losing track. Their numbers were growing too fast to count. They're shadows. Shadows of what? Us. Sorry, Troy, but last time I checked, I only had one shadow. At any given moment, yes, but how many do you think you make in a day? I felt Malik's glance. So they're all coming. Every shadow I've ever made is coming to kill me. Not all of them. It depends on how long Draken's magic user has been gathering them up. If he's tracked us since we left Kale, then I slid him a look. Gods, but I hate magic.
I like to get the negatives out of the way first and then go straight into the positives. The narrator. He does a fantastic job with the accents. but everything else is just not good. It's like he's reading it for the first time, and there are minute pauses between each word, and the sentences, paragraphs, they tend to drag a bit. It was difficult to listen to because of that. I don't think I've ever come across that before. It seems like he was very unfamiliar with the source material. Like he was almost doing it by memory. I know better than that. He clearly was not doing it by memory. I don't know. It just wasn't good. The reading of it was so bad that I stopped and I just read it. The story follows Ian. He's a guy that back in the day was forced to fight in the war, but with the stipulation that he couldn't use his magic. And then, well, the side he's forced to fight on, they're fixing to lose. So he uses his magic and things go bad. A lot of people die. An assassin comes calling and it brings up the past. And he's forced to use the magic that he's fought so long against ever since that day, because his land is in jeopardy. That really sets it up, that really starts it. And what occurs is easily one of the more unique stories I've come across. It's very unique. It's very fun. I enjoyed the personalities of each. There are a ton of characters in the story, and they're all fleshed out. None are one-dimensional. There's Ian, there's Troy, there's Malik, there's the Shireen. I think I'm pronouncing that right. They were unique. At first, I was a little put off. It seemed odd to me that you would have an inborn addiction to essentially what you are. That was curious. But the more the story went on, the more I got it. It's very cutesy for other stories to show magic. Just, we have magic, we can use it, this is awesome. And then there are others that take a more blunt approach. Yeah, you have magic, but if you don't harness that shit, you're going to hurt some people. And then there's this, the Crown of Stones. Magic is incredibly powerful, and if you use it, your ass is going to get addicted to it. Not just that, but you're going to hurt a lot of people in the process. There's a scene where, well, not just in the battle, but there's another scene where magic is used, and it's almost like a nuclear bomb. It does its job, but there's a blast radius. There's an affected area. That's so compelling. How that affects everyone and everything. It makes the possibility of a resolution hard to fathom, which is good. You don't want to know, oh, the heroes are going to come through, everything will be okay. You want there not necessarily to be a bittersweet aspect to what is happening and how things might end, but you don't want it to be cookie cutter or clean cut or, you know, too easy. And it certainly isn't. I really, it hurts to say this audiobook was painful to listen to, but I was able to suck it up and put this review together because the story is genuinely good. No, I didn't like the audiobook, but I just wanted to be perfectly clear that it has nothing to do with the author, nothing to do with the story, because it's a damn good story. So that is my audiobook review. Yeah, it was complicated for me. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and I hope I didn't. But yeah. Until next time, peace.
All right, we are here at the San Francisco Writers Conference, the 2018 San Francisco Writers Conference, and I am fortunate enough to be sitting next to the creator and owner of Smashwords, Mr. Mark Coker. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. So tell everybody how Smashwords got started. I know that's a story you tell every time, but
Sure. About 15 years ago, I met a young woman who ended up becoming my wife, and she had just left her prior job as a reporter for Soap Opera Weekly magazine, and her job was to go to the sets of the Hollywood soap operas and interview the actors and actresses. And I was just blown away and fascinated that there was even such a position for a journalist to do that kind of job. And she started telling me these stories about how the actors and actresses were more over-the-top nuts in real life than they were in front of the camera.
Sure.
And that was unbelievable. If you've ever seen a soap opera,
Yeah,
they're over the top.
read that movie Soap where they did the movie where they kind of parodied that and had that all.
That was an awesome movie. Was that the scene where I think Sally Field had her friend like act like a fan?
Yeah.
That kind of vanity is prevalent. But so I suggested she should write a book about her experiences. She was telling me stories that were just unbelievable. And so I took a sabbatical from my job at the time. I was running a PR agency here in Silicon Valley. And we moved down to Burbank, and we started interviewing soap opera industry insiders to collect all their dirt. Collected all their information, and then we moved to a cabin in Vermont for 4 months and wrote our novel. And so it was a great experience. We had no clue what we were doing, but the Nanny Diaries had just come out while we were doing our research, and we thought, wow, we've got the Nanny Diaries of the soap opera industry.
Nice.
And the first draft of our book was 900 pages. And we thought our ugly baby was beautiful and perfect. To give you a sense of how little we knew, we didn't even name the character names. We named these characters like composites based on their characteristics. We had a character's name was Cotton Eater because there's an actress that eats cotton as a diet aid. But it was an amazing experience writing that novel with my wife. And we did what every writer going through that journey does. We finally realized that the book was not ready for publication. It was not perfect, and it needed to be edited and revised. And we hired book doctors and editors and did multiple revision rounds and did multiple beta reader rounds. And in the end, we got it into really good shape, shopped it around to agents. We had 2 agents offering us representation, and we got to interview them, and we had to reject one of them. And that was an interesting situation. And we were lucky enough to work with Distel & Goderich, a great agency. They've since changed their name slightly. And for 2 years, our agent tried to sell the book to publishers of commercial women's fiction and got nothing but rejection. And the only feedback that we got from the publishers that we could really put our finger on was that previous soap opera novels targeted at soap opera fans, had performed poorly. So the publishers were reluctant to take a chance on us. They all say nice things about your book, but then they say it's not for us. So, our book could have been a piece of garbage, and they just were being polite. But it was a really upsetting experience because at that time, my wife and I, our sole dream was to see the book on the shelf at our local Barnes & Noble, because that's where we went for date night every Friday night. And to have the publishers just close the door on that dream was really upsetting. And especially after doing these multiple beta reader rounds and hearing the feedback from readers, fans of soap operas really enjoyed the novel. So, we felt like there was a market for it. And I started thinking about this and, thinking about, well, what are our next options? And our agent, who was actually, very progressive, he suggested that we consider self-publishing. But I had already started considering that. I had read Dan Pointer's great book. But the option felt unsatisfying to me.
Sure.
I didn't want to become yet another author filling their garage with thousands of unsold books. And I realized that, we could self-publish, but without access to retail distribution, we weren't going to reach any readers.
Yeah.
And then, with my Silicon Valley background, and I've done startups before, and part of the ethos here in Silicon Valley, for right or wrong, is that there's this idealism here in Silicon Valley that we can make the world a better place with technology and solve any problem with technology. Sometimes that's the case, and sometimes it's not. But I thought, all right, here's a really big problem. There are potentially millions of writers around the world who dream of publishing a book. Sure. And 99.9% of them are never going to be able to they're not going to get that opportunity because this traditional publishing system was not going to allow those authors to even have a chance to be judged by their readers. And so I thought there's got to be a solution here with technology. And so I looked at ebooks. And I looked around, and I came up with this crazy idea. I said, I thought, wouldn't it be really cool if someone somewhere could say yes to every author, could invest in every author? Because I really, admired and appreciated the great services that traditional publishers offer authors. They devote their expertise, their resources, their money, their connections to distribution, centuries of institutionalized expertise to help authors build careers and reach readers. But I also decided that the model was broken in the sense that even well-meaning publishers, despite their best intentions, they had to reject most of the books that came in. Yeah. And even with their smarts, they could only guess at what readers wanted to read. Often readers don't know what they want to read until it smacks them upside the head. And those black swans that come out of nowhere. Right. And so I started thinking, there are probably thousands of books that went to the grave with the author unpublished that if only they'd been given a chance, might have gone on to become, recognized as, cultural treasures, literary masterpieces that have been lost to humanity for all time. And I thought, this is just wrong. So, I came up with the idea for SMASHWORDS. I thought, maybe I could be the one to create a free publishing platform that would allow any writer anywhere in the world to publish a book for free and have that book judged by readers.
Why do you think it's important for indie authors to use SMASHWORDS?
Well, SMASHWORDS helps authors maximize their distribution opportunities. So we make it possible for your book to appear in all the major bookstores, except for Amazon. We only distribute a small number of books to Amazon. There are millions of readers that only buy books at other retailers. And so, we're a big believer in distribution, making your book as widely available as possible so readers can discover your book. And we've built just, I think, amazing tools that make it fast, free, and easy to get your book out there. And we've built, some really great marketing and promotion tools within the SMASHWORDS platform, like the SMASHWORDS coupon feature. And we've continued to enhance that feature ever since we first introduced it like 9 years ago. So a lot of promotional flexibility. And of course, the SMASHWORDS store pays the highest royalty rates you're going to find anywhere, up to 80% list, even on low-cost books.
Along the lines of growing, SMASHWORDS, what do you project in the next 5 years or 10 years down the road for SMASHWORDS? What is coming up that you're looking to be a part of or ahead of? Because you've pretty much been always ahead of the innovation platform of the idea of ebooks. Where are you looking toward the future? What do you see in about 5-10 years that SMASHWORDS can take advantage of?
Well, core to our DNA is a love and support of booksellers and retailers and the value that they provide to society. So we're going to continue to fight to maximize the success of our retail partners. There's a limit to what we can do because ultimately they're running their own businesses and they don't always run their businesses as wisely as they should. But we're going to continue to support them. And we're also going to continue to fight, to be a positive counterbalance to, some of the predatory practices that are happening out there, not just with Amazon, but with, publishing services companies that take advantage of authors. On the tools side, we are going to continue to develop tools in the Smashwords platform that give authors more and more control over their books and how their books are promoted, and more opportunities to connect with readers. So we're going to continue focusing on serving authors best we can.
What's one common mistake you see authors make in when they're submitting to Smashwords or putting themselves out there on Smashwords?
Well, authors can spend a lifetime writing their books, but one of the biggest mistakes I see is that when it comes time to understand the business and understand the mechanics of publishing and how to design a beautiful book, a lot of authors get lazy. Sometimes authors are their own worst enemies. You get authors that insist upon designing their own ebook covers. Even though they can afford, to spend $50 or $100 to hire a professional, they insist on doing it themselves. And inevitably, 99% of those authors end up shooting themselves in the foot by putting out a cover that looks homemade, because readers have no tolerance for that.
Yeah.
If your cover projects homemade, then your cover is projecting to the reader, run away. I'm an amateur, I don't know what I'm doing. Every year we do the Smashwords survey, where we look at aggregated sales data across our retail network, and we try to identify potential best practices that can give indie authors an advantage. One of these best practices is to always launch your book with an ebook pre-order. We've been evangelizing ebook pre-orders now for about 5 years.
Yeah.
But based on our data from 2017, only about 12% of indie authors are releasing their ebooks as pre-orders.
Yeah.
And in the 2017 survey, we also revealed for the first time, we analyzed what percentage of a category's book sales were going to books that were released as pre-orders versus books that were simply released the day of release. And category by category, the books that are born as pre-orders are vacuuming up all the sales, which means the authors who are not releasing their books as pre-orders are making a huge mistake. They're undermining their long-term career as an author. And it's frustrating for me to see that, because it's such an easy thing to do. And one of the innovations that we did, probably among the first to do it, was to create what we call assetless pre-orders, where you can establish a pre-order even before the book is finished, up to 12 months in advance. And so the tools are out there if indie authors just take the time to learn them.
Has Smashwords looked at other security options in terms of keeping the book safe? Because book pirating is a big deal, and it seems to be when you have all formats, it's pretty easy to pull down.
Well, I know it's a big concern of authors, piracy. There's really nothing more upsetting than to see that your book has been stolen, a book that you deserve to be paid for. But I don't think piracy is hurting authors the way they think it is. Often when we get frantic emails from authors who think they're being pirated, we're hearing from authors that are selling really poorly, and often they're concluding that the reason is piracy. I remember, I haven't shared this story very often, but this was probably going back 7 or 8 years ago. And in the very early days of Smashwords, there was an author who had previously been traditionally published, and he sent me an email, and he said, "Do you think I'm a fool that I would upload my book to your platform as an ebook? I'd make my book available as an ebook, because I can guarantee you that within a day, millions of copies are going to be stolen." And I just saw this email, and I thought, this is laughable. If only he could be so lucky. I would pay a lot of money to have my novel
millions of
read
copies, sure.
by a million people. It would probably lead to a movie deal and more book sales, and it would, be a wonderful thing. So I know there's services out there now that are preying upon that fear, where you can pay them whatever, $10 or $20 a month, and they'll alert you whenever your book appears somewhere that they deem as unauthorized. It's like a constant jolt of fear to your daily day, and it's only going to upset you. I can say that most of the time when we get a report of an author's book is being pirated, often it's some shady like site that doesn't even have the book. It's just advertising the book. It's trying to steal credit card numbers, or you know, other times it's an affiliate site and you click the link to get the book and it directs you to Amazon. So that site is actually doing you a service by promoting your book. You know, but occasionally they'll have books that are unauthorized. Like if an author has a free book, often those free books end up somewhere else for free. So it's not as damaging as authors fear it is. Sure. You know, I hate piracy. You know, our interests are fully aligned with the authors, because if people are stealing our books, we're not making any money either. Right. But I really hate to see authors get so wound up and so upset about it that it just paralyzes them. Yeah. Because the only way to guarantee that your book is never pirated is to never publish. And that's not an option. Right. But there are very simple steps that authors can take to minimize the piracy. Price your book at a fair price so it's affordable to your audience. Make your book fully distributed so it's available internationally at all the stores that your readers can use. And then number 3, add what we call the SMASHWORDS license statement. And everyone has seen this statement now because we pretty much made it public domain, right, and everyone uses it now, but it's that statement that you see that says, you know, thank you for purchasing this book. This book is licensed for your personal use only, and if you're reading this book and it wasn't purchased by you or expressly for you, then, you know, please honor the writer's hard work and purchase your own copy. So that's kind of a Trojan horse that encourages honest people, if they obtain the book, you know, illegally, you know, by a friend sharing the book with them, that you know, a lot of those people will become readers. You know, back in the old days of print, if you read a book that you loved, you handed it to a friend, no one thought of that as piracy. Right. Or if you sold it to a used bookstore, right, you know, no one saw that as piracy, right, even though you're profiting and the author doesn't profit. Right. You know, I believe that most readers are honest. Yeah. Most readers appreciate the work from these authors, and that small minority of scumbags who only read stolen books, yeah, they don't represent a lost customer anyway. Right. And at least you got a reader. Right. So you know, I think if authors can adopt a healthier attitude, and a lot of authors do, if they can see piracy as something that's annoying like mosquitoes, but it's not going to kill you, and it's just the price of being there, the price of being successful, then they can focus on what really matters, which is writing more books, trying to be the best writer they can, learning the best business practices of professional publishing, and just serving their readers.
Here's all you really need to know about the show. Hello, my name's Anna, and I play Anna, and I love my sister Claire Bear with honey blonde hair. She's so pretty, and she meets Johnny, and well, Johnny is a mensch, I should mention, but in the movie I don't like him, because he's, you know, this is about me, and my abandonment issues, which are triggered. And then I meet Art, who's a fart bucket douche. But what can I say, we're in the same shoes, and we come up with a plan. Two unlikely characters coming up with a plan, which is to break them up, and I know that's fucked, but that's Anna. And hilarity ensues, and there's crying, and there's tears, and there's agony, and it's like, guys, we made a great movie.
Okay, so this year's theme at CineQuest is impact and having a vision. How do you feel that your film fits that theme?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think that this movie is about how people deal with loss and how people deal with where they're at in life in terms of their relationships and what kind of milestones they feel like they're meeting or not meeting. And so I think that the impact to me that we were trying to put out with this film is a sense of giving people permission to be okay with where they are right now, and kind of allowing yourself to let go of those pressures that life puts on you to be like something you should versus something that you are, or understanding what that means to you.
I think it talks about marriage and asks the question, how do you feel about this institution, which is a question that's pretty big right now.
Yeah.
And also it begs the question, how do you regard love, and how much do you believe in it, and what does that look like to you? And also, can you accept that whatever your answer to that question is fine for you, but not necessarily the answer for someone else?
So with a movie subject like marriage that's been done millions and millions of times in film and things like that, how conscious were you about kind of approaching it in a different way, and how careful were you to avoid cliches that pitfall these kind of movies typically?
Yeah, we really wanted to see it from a different perspective with this film. So this is about two sisters. So the story is the bond between two sisters, and then what happens when the younger one gets engaged, and how that puts them on a crazy course. And Anna teams up with Art over here to try and break up the engagement, and so it gets kind of wild. It's fun.
And I mean, I would add to that, I think also it's like, because it's told from the point of view of the people who are hating the wedding happening, I think it gives it like a very comedic new perspective.
Now, with this diverse group of people and this awesome cast that you have assembled, did any of them surprise you with when they came to talk to you, when you decided to approach them about doing a role? Did they give you something that you didn't expect from that particular role, and did they change anything that you originally had planned?
Well, we had worked with actually almost everyone here before, and we knew and loved all of them. So it was
that
basically
helps,
like,
right?
yeah, it helped a lot. So everyone here is people we knew we wanted to work with. Selena actually wrote the script with everyone in mind and used their voices as she was writing. So we just had our fingers crossed that everyone wanted to do it.
But also, I think people added a lot of improv and a lot of their own jokes, and a lot of, like, we went through the script together, and we would do a pass at, like, people adding their own stuff into the lines. And then, like, when we were actually shooting, we would have, like, 2 takes that was scripted and 2 takes that's improv, and we used a lot of the improv lines. And yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone brought so much more than what we expected, because we all knew that they were great actors, but we didn't know how many layers of depth they could bring to these characters.
And for the actors, being familiar with having worked together and everything, and is that process different for you then? Does it change in the way you approach your role, and because you know who you're talking to and how you're going to approach it? Does that make it easier? Does it change for you? How do you, or do you stick to your process and stay there?
I think for me it was great because we all felt like a family. When we were there, it was like everything was in sync, and the behind the scenes too was everything was so fluid, and like we didn't know that there was any problems. You know, I'm sure they were dealing with problems all the time. we never knew what they were dealing with, just because like everything was so efficient.
I would add to that too, we were lucky enough as actors, we had a lot of room to play around with what we had, and as actors kind of rehearse with each other and get to know each other even better and explore characters even more. And I feel like as an actor I grew so much on this movie because I was given that room to really go for it and try new ways, and it might be really wrong or it might be discovering something great, so really nice.
I want to add to that actually knowing Dan and Selena for years before and having worked together definitely changes what that collaboration, what that process is. You have a rapport and you have a history, you know each other fairly deeply, because not only have you spent time working together, you've been diving into humanity together, which also leads into long nights drinking wine and talking, and it leads to a certain shorthand, and you know, we came up with like little, you know, we had a running shorthand about dials, like turn up the Kristen Wiig or like turn up Anne Hathaway, and like this scene we want it to be straight up Amy Schumer. Like what you know, we just came up with our own little language, and it changed a lot. It made everything quicker.
No, yeah, I think we all surprised each other because we're so comfortable with each other.
and we all saw something new from each other. The writing was just so good. We were able to develop on set very fluidly our set.
Yeah. And when we're friends, it's like we all want each other to be successful so
Yeah.
badly, you know?
Yeah.
Like when you love your friends, you want them to be successful.
Sure.
You know? It's only beneficial for everyone. So, you know, there's a lot of heart put into the whole process. So I felt, especially from these two, you know.
And that's rare to find too. On,
Sure.
on a lot of production.
Yeah, even indie ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Sometimes they can be cold.
Oh, yes.
This whole production had the spirit of like a black box theater
Very
ensemble collaboration, and it also had the drive of you know, an indie filmmaker.
You know, last night I was talking to a lady named Sharon at Blacksmith. I gave her a pen, and like I was like pitching her on this. But there's like some productions where like it's like a really good time on set, and then like you watch what you did, and you're like, wow, we should have been a little more focused. Like, and then there's ones where it's like, oh god, like everyone's just hating each other, but then it goes up, and you're like, wow, look at that chemistry, that came across great. But then this, like on set, it's like it was so fun on set, and it turned out so good, and it's like, wow, it's the best of both worlds. So it's cool to be a part of something like that.
Do you know why we're here?
You guys.
Sister!
Hi. Anna, this is Johnny.
Okay. Is he like a serious boyfriend?
Actually, we're engaged! Ah! How long have you guys known each other?
They're clearly not thinking this through. Johnny is not ready to get married.
My mom passed away not too long ago, and Claire's just marrying this guy to not feel the loss. So what are we gonna do?
I don't know, maybe we can come up with a plan to ruin the wedding.
Okay. Yeah. I was doing this job search, but that's not important right now. There are no bad ideas. Whatever you got, you lay it on me, I write it on the board.
God, Anna, do you just not want me to be happy?
I don't think that you know him. Been married for 20 years. What would you tell yourself right now?
I think I would tell myself that no matter how hard life gets, to remember that you found someone incredibly special. If we remember that, then we can get through anything. I love you.
You know how they always say, it's not you, it's them.
Oh, it's definitely me.
What unique challenges did you have with the feature that you weren't expecting?
I mean, to be honest, I think this is probably the easiest thing I've done in terms of how much I've loved the process and the people involved. So I feel incredibly grateful and lucky for that. I think the hardest part actually comes like at this point where you want to get it distributed, and you know, obviously everyone's incredibly talented, but we don't have like big name cast, and that, you know, makes things difficult. And well, except for Charlie Rossman. No, but I mean, I really believe in the power of like good acting, you know, and I think we have that. And we've signed with Shoreline Entertainment as our sales agent, which is a huge deal for an indie film. Sure. So that's been really exciting. But it is, I think, the hardest part for me is like this scary next place of like, where does it go? How many people get to see it? Like, can it go on a place like Netflix? Like, that would be incredible. Like, where are the steps for how this movie gets out in the world? And we don't have a marketing budget, and that's like, I see now so much where those marketing numbers go, you know, that makes the world of a difference. So I think that was, for me, the hardest. What about you?
Yeah, I think with a short, like, here's the end of the line. We made it. We're at CineQuest for premiering our short. You know? But then with a feature, there's a longer life to that, and that's what we're still learning every day and trying to figure out exactly how everything works. So things are moving on, and things are moving in the right direction, so we're really excited about it.
What do you guys love about making comedies like this?
Everything. Honestly, doing this film reminded me how much I love this as my job and how I want to do it every day. I just want to be doing it. Diving into like this sort of murky water and like trying to figure out what's what with like your, you know, some of your best friends. There's nothing more fun than that.
Yeah.
It was, you know, we didn't get any sleep and we didn't care. And even like those moments when something goes like terribly wrong are like exciting in their own way. Like Claire had this amazing take. It was just like,
Oh, God.
what?
Yeah.
And we lost it. Something what happened?
Yeah, something
There
happened
was
with
something
the
wrong with the
recorder.
camera. Yeah.
And it
just
we just
blanked.
lost
My
it.
worst
We had to
nightmare.
reshoot
Oh.
it.
Yeah.
It came true. Yeah. But even that
Why
little
did
drama
they?
was
Why
just
did it
like
have to happen
juicy.
today?
I know.
But I agree, and with this comedy, I think it's so special as well because, yes, it will make you laugh your ass off, but you will also, it really touches your heartstrings and really connects with, I think, anyone at any walk of life, which I think is so special about our movie. I think it takes you on such a roller coaster, which is what life does, and I think that's why it's such a special movie. Yeah,
Yeah, comedy's tough.
Yeah.
Comedy's tough to make, and this, it's so amazing because it felt so easy to make this, and it's good. Not just because I'm in it, but I think that it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and working on comedies like this is really fun because you can keep things loose and you find surprises on set. Like, so we improv'd a lot. We would do a couple takes as scripted and then like find new things, and
Right.
it was just so wonderful to work on, like the yoga scene with Julia and Anna. Like, oh my God, yeah, it's just so much fun. Yeah.
I really appreciated the ability to be flexible in that and how you were adamant for each take being like, okay, so do a couple online on the script and then giving room to play and then still kind of, like you have to know the rules before you break them. So like knowing the rules and then like stretching it out and just giving the freedom to do so allowed us, I think, to discover some of those more moments.
And it's hard to trust that sometimes, but when you do trust it and there's that magic moment when something just kind of slips out, and then you fight your director for one more take so you can perfect it. Amazing moments. Super fun moments.
It was kind of weird, and I think, I'm obviously, we'll all go on to do other films and other projects and whatnot, but the one thing about this film that I think everyone would concur with, I remember when I got the email from these guys, hey, we're going to make a movie. It's like we were all at a point in our separate careers and our lives where we're all ready to do this sort of endeavor, and this is obviously a very big endeavor. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that just solidified that kind of bond that we've all sort of shared throughout this.
It's really funny because I've talked to a lot of friends of mine who are also, indie filmmakers and who graduated, when we both went to AFI. And so we have a bunch of friends who are doing different things. And when I tell them about our experience, everyone's like, that's not usual. Like, that's not, like, usually it's really hard and you fight with a lot of people and some people stop talking to each other. And, not to say that there aren't, but like, it really, it's interesting because I always tell Dan, it's like, I want to keep making bigger things, but like, this might be the easiest, funnest thing I'll ever make. I don't know, I hope not, but like it just felt so good all the time that it's like I don't know how often, like, or if it was the group of people that we all just like divinely, energetically.
It was a hurricane of positive energy,
Yeah.
and you started it, and then you hopped on board, and we all trickled in until it was like unstoppable. It was really, really special.
I had an unusual experience in that I'm at a point in my life where I want to just try to be as honest as I can with what I do, and to be relaxed and to have the opportunity to be really relaxed and just be that was given here, and I thought I'm very thankful for that. And one other thing I will say, I got first time I saw it really on the big screen was last night, and it was such a gift because I really love my dad. He died under tragic circumstances, but he was a really honest person, and I felt like I was watching him, and it was such a really deep thank you, and it's a beautiful movie, and I'm thankful for that too.
Oh.
So, what do you guys love about making indie films?
Oh, well, I have a lot that I love about it, and I feel like you actually have creative control. It is a lot harder because you have a lot less money. That's just what it is. It's like you are opting for the no money version of anything. But at the same time, it forces you, I think, to be really creative in ways that you wouldn't be forced to explore. And I think that it also allows you to build this kind of family dynamic, right? Where like you're all huddled in together trying to figure it out. It's not like all these, you know, spacious trailers where everyone just goes and does it. You know, it's like everyone's just in each other's face all the time because we don't have that much space. But we're also like getting to know each other and like loving each other and building things together, which I think is really cool. And then ultimately, I mean, Dan and I sat with this movie for months in post-production, just like, we've watched this probably over 350 times, that's not exaggeration. So, so I feel like being able to actually make those decisions together without someone who just says like, no, this is too blah, or this needs to move faster, or which I'm sure is the way it goes. And I think also a lot of friends of mine who are actually working with more studio films, they say that decisions are really hard to make because there's usually like 13, 14 people on an email thread just being like, well, what does Bob think? And then Bob's like, I don't know, I'm CCing Lisa. And then like Lisa's like, I'm out of the country. And then it's like, you know, it's like, how does anything happen? I feel like here, it's like you drive the boat, everyone's on, you just go, you know? And like, I mean, we made this from idea, nothing written, idea to fully finished product in 1 year, which is super fast.
We just keep that around.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think what's really amazing with indie films is you can just start like Selena decided, we're starting the train and we're going for it, and then you can just push and you can go for it, and then you find the team yourself, and yeah, you have the creative control to just figure it out on your own with like a team of people you love.
It's basically like stepping into these shoes and saying, I am the person who does the job, instead of like submitting yourself to the big people upstairs and saying, can I please do the job? You're like, no, I'm just doing the job. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, that Christopher Guest posse that you idolized, or that Apatow crew that you wanted to be in, now you just made your own.
What happens when you take a band that's equal parts, I don't know, Wilco, a bit of Flaming Lips, and with an intro, if you hear the song, that violin, it sounds a bit like Van Morrison. This is Oryx and Crake. When you're in advertising, you get to meet some really interesting people. And I've had the pleasure of working with 3 members of Oryx and Crake because they work at the same place. The 2 people that I have worked with that worked on this album are Ryan Peoples and Eric Netherton. They're both sound engineers, so you can imagine that this is going to be a very sonically rich album. The album in question is Marriage. It's the only one I've heard up to this point, but I should explore more, and I do hope that they explore more things together, because musically speaking, they're fascinating guys. When you work with sound engineers, they tend to focus on different things. They have different skill sets. They work at different paces. Some work super fast. Some work just fast. All of these guys are top-notch and honestly elite guys. From a 15-year career in advertising, these are some of the best engineers that I've worked with. So working specifically with Eric, he told me, oh, I play in a band, here's a CD. And I put it in the car and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And let's go back. You hear the horns, it's all over the place, but it has that Van Morrison feel. And it's really cool, and it's a really solid album. I still haven't been able to see them live because they haven't played that many shows, but I do think that they've got the bug. And I really do hope that they continue to play gigs and do new and interesting things. I first met Eric, and then I met Ryan. Both super nice guys, just good people, people that you like to work with, and to see them pursue passions beyond their day job, because they are super professional at what they do. I can attest to that. I've worked with both of them on several commercials. But when it comes to what they like to do, Eric is fascinated by percussion, and I actually shared on my Facebook page his TED Talk about the nether box. Basically, Eric's the type of person that he says it himself. You can't go with him to Home Depot without him touching everything and trying to get tones from cans of paint and using boxes of screws as shakers and different things like that. He's a big kid when it comes to music and going to places where there's stuff that you can tinker with. When it comes to Ryan, Ryan is the vocalist and the guitarist. I'm not sure what other instruments he plays, because I'm sure that they're this type of band that they play pretty much everything. They don't limit themselves, and if someone wants to play bass in a song, they're not gonna go like, no, that's my instrument. They try to check how that is. In terms of the album, it's got 12 tracks. It's super solid. Some songs are a bit left field. Others are transition tracks. It's not an album to listen to in shuffle. It's an album to listen through track 1 through 12. In terms of highlights, the first track, Strange As You Are, it blew me away in terms of how many layers it has. You can listen to it in your car and enjoy it, but if you listen to it on headphones, you're going to basically hear a different song. This song is The Show, and they actually have a video for this, and Ryan looks all artsy and stuff, but it's a really good video, and I love this song. Just the chord progression, the good balance between piano and guitar, and a good rhythm section. Going back to who they are as professionals in their day job, these are sound engineers. Trust me, it's a very meticulous album. It's not something that you're gonna get fully from one listen. I've listened to it quite a few times. I have it in the car. I still listen to CDs, and I'm happy I do, because I got to listen to them without having to stream it. And they make traffic a lot more bearable in Atlanta. So yeah, when I get to see them live, I'll be sure to record some of their music live and share it as well. But for now, RX and Craig, the album is Marriage, and my recommendation is Full. So by all means, check them out. Until next time, peace, love, and microwaves.
Hey everybody, this is C. Penticofff from A Novel Connection. You haven't seen me in quite a while. If you remember back in about from June to September, I would do videos for Joe's show, This Week in Indies, every week. But A Novel Connection took a hiatus, and our library was closed for about 4 months. Well, we recently relaunched last January, and we changed the model of our library, basically. It is now a free review service for writers. For readers, it's a place to come and get free books in exchange for honest reviews. If you don't have time to review one book per month, you can always upgrade to the $2.99 per month deal, subscription, which will exempt you from having to do any reviews, and it also funds the service for writers. It keeps the service free for writers, basically. So if you don't have time for reviews, sign up for the Reader Connection. We also have a subscription for middle grade and high schoolers, so tweens. It gives them access to all of our middle grade books, chapter books, and young adult books while restricting them from all adult content. That's $2.99 per month also. You go to www.anovelconnection.com to go subscribe. But I also wanted to announce an exciting opportunity for writers that's coming up with A Novel Connection, and we're hoping to have it launched by summer of 2019. I won't go into too much detail, but basically we're going to be opening up a premium version of our subscription library, which will it will not be free. It will be available to paid users, paid subscribers, and the writers are going to basically get a portion of the profits that we make from the subscriptions. So it's going to very much be a submission process. Not anybody is going to be able to be in it like the leading online subscription library. We're doing that because we want to focus on quality rather than quantity, for one. For two, we want our writers to be paid fair, and this is really the only way to do that. And I won't go into too much detail. So if you're a reader and you're interested in subscribing to this when it comes out, you definitely want to go to www.anovelconnection.com, go up in the menu and press dollar deals, or subscribe to be a free reader, either one. But if you go to the menu and you press dollar deals, that's going to sign you up for our newsletter. Every week you'll get an email with different books that are on sale for $1. Okay, we hunt those down for you, but you'll also, get a monthly newsletter. You'll be kept up to date on all things A Novel Connection. Again, you can also keep up to date on those things if you subscribe to be a reader right now by going to www.novelconnection.com/subscribe. So that's about all the news I have for you today. I don't have time to go over any of our new books or hot and trending books because I just had some announcements I wanted to tell you guys. So if you guys want to know what our hot and trending books are, then go to our website. Same thing with our new books. Okay, go to www.novelconnection.com/subscribe to become a member today. Have a good day.
This is such a different tone. It has a unique take on the divorce romantic comedy film, and yet still somewhat it has the successful formula on how these films usually go and work. How much of that was your pre-production and putting that together, forethought, and how much of it was when the actors started to breathe life into it, and did it change any in that impact?
I think while Hoos was writing the screenplay, because I was, you know, he would send me pages at a time and dozens of drafts later, we were always talking about that. We didn't want to do a standard romantic comedy. And we wanted to feel real. We wanted to, did not want it to feel predictable. And it was definitely in our minds, you know, because, you know, I sometimes have an issue with the label romantic comedy, because with it comes certain convention. Sure. And people then have certain expectations. Right. And I think if you go into our movie with those expectations, you're going to find something different, which I think is great.
Just to add on to that, I think, you know, while writing it, and while I was sending Paul pages and we were going through it, you know, my wife was a big help in giving her pages at a time and her feedback on just relationships in general and her side of things. I think that was a big deal, was making sure that, you know, I was writing it from my own personal stuff and then giving Paul pages, who has been married and has kids and everything else. And then
also been, I'm a divorced father, so I've been through the worst part of it, you could say. Sure, sure.
And but just, yeah, while writing it and then going into production and while filming it, we wanted to make sure that it felt like Paul said, organic and real, in terms of how this couple looked, to how these scenes played out. We wanted them to feel like they were sort of gritty a little bit and down and nerdy, and like you really are when you're at home with somebody that you're dealing with and going through these things. So hopefully that comes across.
Yeah. What do you think the actors added once they got their level, you know, got into the idea?
Well, I mean, it was so different for the different actors. I mean, Marguerite, who was amazing in the movie, who plays my wife, she just brought this. She was so great in the movie, and she just brought this. Just that deep down sort of emotionality to this character that was very, again, just really relatable, I think, to people who were. I mean, Marguerite's, you know, she's an amazing looking woman, but she brought this relatable reality and organic feel to the relationship. And Peter Fonda obviously was, he brought his own wacky sort of character to this thing, and it was great. And then Hamish, of course, brought the comedy, right? It was he was so good in this role, but these actors brought their own thing to it, you know, and that it was great. Yeah,
I can add a little bit. Yeah. Like actors like Marguerite. I mean, they're just so good and professional, and they really care about what they do. Right. And that's the case for every single actor that worked on this thing. It's that they're amazing. You know, they really work hard. They study, and when you're ready to go, they bring it. There are conversations like with any film where a director has with his or her cast. You know, it's talking about stuff beforehand, but what I like to see, you know, as we start rolling is I don't want to ruin what they may contribute by saying too much off the top. Right. You know, you want to see what they bring, especially in the moment when they're finally there on set, you know, with the lights and cameras going and it's ready to go, and then you can make adjustments afterwards. Like, okay, maybe this isn't working so much, right? Let's maybe try this.
And I mean, we talked about when I saw you on the red carpet. You guys are Are you also a native of Northern California?
I wouldn't call me a native, but I've lived in Northern California for a long time.
One of the things about filmmaking here is, like, I've made a number of features, and the community outside of the film crew has always been a big part of it. And I can honestly say that we would never been able to make any film without their help. And you know, it's that commitment and that love is what keeps us in the Bay Area making films.
Oh, nice. Locals, I love it.
Oh, yeah.
We shot our film in the North Bay in Santa Rosa in Sonoma County. I was actually born and raised in Silicon Valley. Santa Clara, actually.
how much did familiarity help you guys? Did it help you shape this film in terms of the processes, and it did allow for a certain freedom that you might not have anywhere else because you know the area so well?
Yeah, I mean, so I speaking of Northern California, I went to junior high school and high school in Santa Rosa, California, which is where we shot the film, is where I live now. And in many ways, Paul's right. It was really kind of a love letter to Northern California, but really more so Santa Rosa. And that was so much a part of the movie. When we were writing it, we sort of knew where we were going to be filming, and we knew the locations, which happened to be in Santa Rosa and many parts of Northern California. And so it was a big part of it. And I think going through the process of sending Paul pages and working on these different scenes that we were going to be filming, making sure that we shot Northern California, whether it was grapevines or whether it was the rivers or just those elements of Northern California that are so special and so unique to that area. Was the bridge, yeah, absolutely, which was such a big deal to the film and at the heart of the movie, even though it's just about this couple and it could have been shot anywhere, and the relatability factor to it, I think just being in Northern California was a big part of the movie. Absolutely.
I just want to add, and I think part of what you feel when you watch the film, Joe, about these characters and the story itself, comes from that kind of Northern California feel and the people who live here, and just the areas. I mean, it varies as you go from city to city, obviously, but that area has a vibe, and the people there have a vibe, and I think that's what it's hard to describe, right, but you feel it when you watch the film, I think, and people were feeling that when they were reading Hoose's screenplay, because so often I got from people that they're like, you know what, I know people like this.
Yeah, because I mean, there are certain things in here I think would have probably thrown you for a loop, like the treehouse natty and stuff like that. If you didn't have that would probably change the dynamic.
We already had access to those things, and so Hoose wrote them into the script. It was as simple as that. Like we didn't, think of that. We need a tree. Like, what do we have access to? As an independent filmmaker, you try to do that a lot.
What do you cherish about being an indie filmmaker or being in indie film?
That's a great question. I think for me, I mean, I could go on about this for hours, but I lived in Los Angeles for a long time. I was an actor. I was going on auditions all the time, and I moved back to Northern California a while ago with my wife and kids, and I think there was a reason for moving back there, and part of it was Paul and I were working together, and there was a certain time where I said to myself, what do I want to do exactly in this industry, and that was being true to being an independent filmmaker, and I think that goes back to making short films. It's the trial and error process of it, and that's what I love about it. It's not the pressure of making a movie and having to make money off of it and having to succeed and having to. I mean, it's great when your films get watched and people enjoy them, which is why we do what we do. But for me, it's about the process. It's about the writing a movie, getting together and saying, hey, let's go make this movie over a weekend, and hopefully people enjoy it, but if they don't, we get something out of it. We're either learning something from it that you take into the next movie, or you're always learning. And so for me, just being an independent filmmaker, I mean, it's not easy being an independent filmmaker, because there's so much you want to do, and sometimes it takes money to do the things you want to do. But I think it gets back to what we were talking about earlier, which is just going out and making movies, and that's what was and still is important to me, is being able to do that.
The community, yeah. The people themselves. I always tell people that my most favorite thing about filmmaking, and definitely indie filmmaking, is collaboration. I mean, without collaboration, your indie films will fail. And so to surround you because you know, people aren't getting paid a lot, right? So as much as it's important it is to make a good film, it's important to have a good experience too. So when things get stressful and all that, you have to surround yourself with great people.
I want to know, when you guys were filming this, was there any time and any scene that you guys had a hard time getting because you guys couldn't stop laughing about it?
I'll let the director take this one.
I mean, there's a particular scene, I don't want to give anything away, that takes place in the treehouse, where it wasn't that they were necessarily laughing, although there was some of that. And I think, which... a very vulnerable scene. And there were so many mechanics involved to the scene, too, that just like off the bat, they just needed to work on it, because they could get easily lost, because by the way, this scene is my favorite scene in the entire movie. And they just worked, Marguerite and Hoos, it's nothing but them in that scene. It's very intimate, and there are a lot of things going on in that scene, and I thought they did such a fantastic job. But they, there were times where they just had to work on it, and they just nailed it. They nailed that, for sure, in my opinion. But laughing wise, I don't know. It's like they're so professional, all of them, that it didn't happen a ton. I think most of the laughter came after, because they just they were so good to. Keep that urge to laugh inside of them. But I don't know about you, Who's.
No, I think Paul's right about this particular scene, which again I don't want to give away. But yeah, it was one of those interesting scenes. Like I think we were running short on time. Maybe we were shooting the scene. Well, yeah, every scene when you're making an independent movie, yeah. But we were shooting this particular scene. I think we were trying to get this particular scene done before we had to go to lunch, and because of the mechanics of the scene, there were so many things that we needed to be doing in the scene physically, with a lot of dialogue as well, and I wouldn't say we were having trouble with it necessarily, but it was
complex.
It was very complex.
There was a lot going on.
And again, a very, very vulnerable scene for the two of us that were in that scene, and there was a lot happening, and we were filming in a very tight space.
It covers a range of emotions.
And it covers.
It's a turning point, I believe, in the film.
It's a turning point. It covers a range of emotions, like Paul said, and so yeah, we broke for lunch, and Marguerite and I stayed back and continued to work on the scene while everyone was at lunch. And then when we came back, that's when the scene came to life, I felt like. So, again, it wasn't, I don't think we ever had any moments. I think everyone was pretty composed while we were trying to get this done, but that was the one scene in particular where we had to work on it to get it right. And hopefully it comes across that way.
I enjoyed myself immensely, and I felt terrible yesterday. Sitting in my hotel room wondering, what are you doing? Is Mendon wondering about my tummy? Yes. Somebody asked me the question about, well, what filter is that? I really had an enjoyable time working with all of you. I felt like we were a company, and that's all I was trying to do with all that goofy shit. And so I'm going to join you by having an actual alcoholic beverage.
You may or may not know this about Go Now's flagship show, but every episode I do try and tie into a central theme. From the interviews that I do, to the intros that I do, to the short films that we show on each episode, they're all tied to one theme. And while you may think, well, this is the 25th episode, it's just a big show, it's just a celebration of Go Now and what we do, that's true of every episode, but really, truly, there was a central theme. And it may be the most important theme that an indie could learn, or know, and that's collaboration. You see, each one of the interviews you saw in this episode had at some point been a collaboration, whether it was a collaboration that started them on their journey, whether it's a collaboration that enhanced their journey, whether it was a collaboration that found the pinnacle of the journey. Every time there was a collaboration involved, and that collaboration led to something spectacular. Indies helping other indies. Indies making art. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. And everybody who is out there looking to do this on their own, I implore you to let go, to find that moment when you can collaborate with someone, because it's magical. It's something special, because it's something that you can never expect. And some collaborations are great, some collaborations aren't. It just happens. But collaborating allows you the freedom to be an artist. It really does. It's a central idea behind being an artist, because collaborating just makes your art that much better. With that in mind, I am very lucky to have many, many collaborators that help put Go Indie Now together, that help us make this a complete show. I have that on every show that I do, and I am so grateful to all of them. And I would name you all by name, but then this video would be 3 hours long. You know who you are, and I will thank you personally my own way, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I really do. I appreciate each and every one of you who watch this show, who comment, who share, who subscribe. That too is a collaboration. That is the ultimate collaboration. You are giving us a demand for this show. You're saying, hey, we want to see more of this show. We want to see you do this. We want to see you talk to this person, or show us this. Tell us about this book or this movie. And that is something really unique and special as much as anything. And so I cherish those collaborations. And now having 25 episodes in the can and online for everybody to view, go back and see all 25 if you haven't. They remind me that I have more collaborating to do, because I need to get better each and every episode. And we do. We aim each and every episode to try and get better. But that's the great thing about collaborating, right? We all grow together. We all learn together. And it's a special thing when you have that. That's what makes a community. That's what makes being indie so special. At least for me. I hope it does for you as well. Because, you know, it's always time to go indie now. All right, we'll see you next episode. Stick around for one of our collaborators showing his short film, Mr. Jinakubo's Box, his very first film. So give it some love, everybody. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gino Kubo. I'm going to be talking about my short film, The Box. Or Box, actually. The original name was The Box, but then that felt a little bit too played. So it's called Box. Let's see, how should I start this? It's a short film, dystopian future. You have a man who's trapped between two worlds kind of thing. Bit of a time travel thing, jumping back and forth. But then again, you have to think about what's really happening in the film. There are a lot of film techniques that are shown and used, I think, in the editing process and in the actual filming of it, that I tried to do as I saw this picture in my mind. The reason why I made this film, so why did I go indie? Why didn't I just, write a script and send it off to Hollywood? People who know me have known that I've been trying to get scripts bought by Hollywood. I've written quite a few scripts, and it's hard to get into Hollywood. And then all the mess with Weinstein happened, and all that other political stuff happened. So I think it's become even harder. to do to get into Hollywood, and I'm a person that likes to get things done, so I I went ahead and said, you know what, I'm going to make my film, and I did. Right, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy Box. It should be coming up after this, and please stay tuned for other films that I'm making.